Ugh, what is this smell? On days when I come home late and take a bath, it's always like this. There's a greenish, really unpleasant smell drifting through the bathroom. The likely source of the smell is probably my husband. I honestly didn't want to think about what he might be doing in the bathroom. I can still bear it, but I wonder how our high school-aged daughter feels about it. That reminds me, I just passed by her a moment ago. That child seemed to have a bigger stomach. At that moment, I was struck by a terrible chill. My daughter's stomach is getting bigger? Why? Since when? I haven't heard about her having a boyfriend. She would tell me if she had one. Could it be that she is carrying a burden she can't talk about to anyone? Suffering alone with her belly growing bigger? If that's the case, then her unhappy face, her stooped posture, and the size of her belly all make sense. The one who made my daughter's stomach grow. My mind started spinning with the worst imaginations. My name is Fiona. I'm 44 years old. I work as a department head in the sales department of a specialty trading company related to food products. I manage several team members and work late every day. These past few years, I've been greatly troubled by my husband, Ben. He's so lazy and sloppy, and it irritates me, who is meticulous. Back when we married 18 years ago, through an introduction from an acquaintance, he wasn't like this. The passage of time is a cruel thing. I can't help but deeply feel this. My husband, who works at a staffing agency, always comes home before me, but does nothing around the house. Instead, he rushes our daughter Ruby, making her cook and take baths. Whenever I come home from work and encounter such scenes, I make it a point to speak sternly to him. Hey, you! Ruby needs to do her high school assignments, right? Please, take care of the housework yourself. How many times do I have to tell you? You can cook, can't you?
Shut up. Housework is a woman's job, right? I'm tired from work.
Again with that? Everyone is tired, right? About 3 years ago, my husband quit the security company he had been working for. He didn't consult me at all when he quit the job. Apparently, he didn't get along with his boss. After that, he started working at the staffing agency he was introduced to by an acquaintance.
Serves them right. My take-home pay is higher than when I was working security. Quitting was the right move.
I remember he was unabashedly happy about that. But it seems that the job at the staffing agency was not an easy one. There was a quota to increase the number of registrants, and it was quite difficult to achieve. In addition to acquiring new users, there were many other tasks to be done. He was simply busy. My husband, who was a mid-career hire, couldn't keep up with the busyness, and it seemed that his colleagues were significantly outpacing him. Moreover, unfortunately, many of the employees at his new workplace had immature personalities. My husband, who jumped into such a place, became an easy target. He was constantly teased by everyone. Ordered around by younger seniors and ridiculed as useless behind his back, he lived through such excruciating days.
Those terrible jerks. Just watch. All they do is childish harassment.
My husband became more and more rough day by day. He was always the kind of person who preferred being at home. He began to vent the stress accumulated at work at home.
Hey, the food. What's going on? I told you to have it ready before I get home.
My daughter Ruby, who always bears the brunt of my husband's yelling, is our only child and a very quiet girl from a parent's perspective. That's probably why he finds it easy to scold her. He is always barking at Ruby.
How many times do I have to tell you to do the housework before your homework, huh?
Hey, how many times do I have to tell you not to blame Ruby? Her studies come first. Housework is secondary. I've told you this. Make your own meals.
It's because you coddle her like that she's no good.
My husband can't defy me. Although we work in different places, I earn much more and hold a higher position. I don't mean to be bossy, but I had to protect my daughter. My husband would yell at Ruby, and I would defend her and blame him. This was the routine in our family. At that time, I couldn't even imagine that he would do such things to our daughter. It was about 2 years ago that I noticed a clear change in my husband's behavior. At that time, it seems the stress he faced at work had become considerable. He often had bags under his eyes from lack of sleep, and he muttered to himself a lot.
Those jerks. They're really taking me for a fool. Just you wait. I'll show them.
One day I noticed something shocking on my husband's head. There was a spot above the left temple where a clump of hair had completely fallen out. After I pointed out, he rushed to the bathroom and shouted loudly in frustration.
I've got a bald spot the size of a dime. It's all because of those jerks at the company. Damn it.
Maybe you should go to the hospital, and maybe talk to your supervisor.
The supervisor is trash too. What's the point in talking to him?
Eventually, my husband expressed a desire to quit the staffing agency. I stopped him. Before quitting without a plan, I wanted him to find something else first. Sending Ruby to a good university, saving for retirement, and the daily expenses, my income alone isn't enough. I couldn't let him quit his job. Every time I argued this, he scratched his head in frustration.
What do you want me to do then? Should I just keep suffering alone, huh?
Nobody is saying that. Why would you think that? If he's being harassed, he should confront it properly. Nowadays, the company he works for should have a compliance office. It's foolish to just complain without following proper procedures. Even when I said this, my husband, who is meek outside, seemed unable to do anything. He continued to bring home the stress accumulated at work and vented it by shouting. Maybe it was still better when it was just shouting. Gradually, my husband started drinking a lot. He got into gambling on weekends. Unnecessary expenses increased, and the atmosphere at home only worsened. He started going out more often, and our money dwindled rapidly. It must be because I looked anxious. One day, a friend noticed and reached out to me, offering to help with any problems. I needed to keep track of where and what my husband was doing to some extent. Grateful for my close friend's kind offer, I asked her for a favor. Later, this would greatly help my daughter and me, but that's a story for later. On one such weekend night, as I was washing dishes in the kitchen, I heard my husband's shouting from the living room, followed by the sound of breaking glass and Ruby's scream. When I went to check, the room was a disaster. Broken glasses, scattered peanuts, and various other items were all over the place. Amidst this chaos, my husband was yelling something at Ruby, who was crouched and covering her ears. His speech was slurred from the alcohol. I couldn't understand what he was saying. When he tried to step on Ruby's back, I quickly restrained him with a bear hug. "What are you doing? It's despicable to try to kick your daughter when you're drunk."
It's her fault. I was enjoying my drink and she brought her study materials to the living room. It ruins the taste of the booze, eh? Are you listening?
For that? I can't believe it. I left my husband and rushed to Ruby. I felt terribly sorry for my daughter, who had been yelled at and almost kicked for such an unreasonable reason. What's the big deal about studying in the living room? If the booze tastes bad, that's my husband's problem. I understand he's stressed, but it's insane to vent it by tormenting our daughter. Never do such a thing to Ruby again. Understand?
Oh, that's right. Then you better give me $500 each month. If you do that, I won't bother Ruby at all. I've been short on money lately, you know?
Using our daughter as a hostage to blackmail your wife? Stop saying such stupid things. How low can a person fall before they're satisfied? Day by day, my husband seemed to become a more sloppy and pitiful person. His drinking increased, his spending became more reckless, and he gradually became unmanageable. On a night about a year after these troubles began, I came homely and grimaced the moment I entered the bathroom. Ugh, what is this smell? A greenish, really unpleasant smell was drifting through the bathroom. Looking at the bathtub, there seemed to be some white liquid floating as well. Unfortunately, this wasn't the first time I had encountered such a disagreeable situation. On days when I come homely and try to take a bath, it often ends up like this. The cause of the smell is undoubtedly my husband. Honestly, I didn't even want to think about what he might be doing in the bathroom. I could still bear it, but I wondered how our high school's daughter felt. Speaking of which, I just remembered passing by her a moment ago. She was unnaturally hunched over, sneaking back into her room as if hiding. That child seemed to have a bigger stomach. At that moment, I was struck by a terrible chill. Is Ruby's stomach getting bigger? Why? Since when? I haven't heard about her having a boyfriend. She would have told me if she had one. Could it be that Ruby is now carrying a burden she can't even tell me about? Suffering alone as her belly continues to grow? My cowardly husband took advantage of my absence to mistreat our quiet daughter to relieve his stress. Despite my better judgment, my mind kept imagining awful things. The pitiful sight of my daughter, surely unwilling, unable to raise her voice while being overpowered by her father. I quickly shook my head. I desperately hoped such a horrifying thing wasn't true. But then, what was the cause of Ruby's visibly enlarged stomach? I was afraid to find out. Several months later, Ruby unusually complained of feeling unwell. Our daughter is quiet by nature, but she's physically robust. Since she was little, she rarely fell ill. I feel kind of feverish. It seems so. Hey, Ruby, about this belly. As I gently touched her stomach, Ruby turned pale and looked away. Her reaction was definitely strange. And above all, her symptoms now. They closely resembled the symptoms I had when I was first pregnant with her. Hey, Ruby, please tell me honestly, who is the father? It's... Mom, She couldn't form any more words. Collapsing on the spot, she burst into tears. I chose not to press further and took her to a nearby obstetrician and gynecologist clinic. Even while we were in the waiting room, I tried to find out the name of the father. But it was no use. Ruby simply refused to answer. She kept her lips tightly sealed and just shook her head. The doctor who examined her was named Steve. During the ultrasound examination, he said,
"You're pregnant."
So it was true. I wonder who the father of the child in Ruby's stomach is. The memory of the smell and the white liquid in the bathtub vividly returned to my mind. Could it be that? When I voiced my dreadful suspicion, Dr. Steve chuckled lightly.
Don't worry, sperms can't survive in a bath. They're sensitive to heat. It's impossible. Can someone get pregnant just by sharing the same bath?
That might be true, but... Just then, as Dr. Steve looked directly at Ruby's face, he widened his eyes in surprise. It looked like he just realized it for the first time. He turned pale. Ruby also seemed surprised when she saw Dr. Steve face to face. I intuitively felt these two knew each other. I questioned them sternly right there. The father is... I think it was this man. Ruby said such an unbelievable thing. Dr. Steve turned even paler. The nurses nearby were also shocked. Dr. Steve's breathing became more erratic. Sweat poured down his face. Perhaps realizing there was no escape, he slumped down.
I'm so sorry. I made a silly mistake. I'm truly sorry.
I was stunned. Couldn't believe that the father of my daughter's child was the obstetrician. Then Dr. Steve revealed something even more unbelievable. He said that the person who introduced Ruby to him was none other than my own husband.
We just happened to sit next to each other at a bar. He said $500 would be enough to introduce a young girl. Of course, I never thought it would be his daughter.
You're the lowest. Both you and my husband are the lowest. I will report this to the police. Dr. Steve fell to the ground and started crying. After that, Ruby told me everything. It seems she accidentally spilled some of my husband's precious liquor while I was away. Then my husband exploded, claiming it was liquor worth $5,000. It must be a lie. There's no way he would drink such expensive liquor at home. But that was enough to deceive Ruby, who knew nothing. My husband had demanded she pay him back. So he told you if you can't pay with money, you should earn it with your body? Yes, he said he would contact me again once he found a client. It was unbelievable. Selling his own daughter and my husband's actions were the lowest of the low. Dr. Steve's actions involving a minor were against the law. As we were leaving the clinic, I declared that I would formally accuse him. Dr. Steve fully accepted his fate, intending to face his punishment without running away. Now for that good-for-nothing, I had to confront him before reporting him. I returned home with my pregnant daughter, feeling a strong anger welling up even as I tried to suppress it. When my daughter and I arrived home, my husband was lying on the living room sofa. He was lazily drinking again. He's all puffed up and unattractive. His face was just hanging there. The more I looked at him, the angrier I got. I kicked the back of the sofa and yelled at him. You scumbag! What do you think of your own daughter? My husband sprang up as if jolted. He looked at me dumbfounded, his face unshaven and sloppy. It seemed he guessed everything from Ruby's downcast expression. He turned pale. I heard it from Dr. Steve. You sold Ruby, didn't you?
No, I was just making Ruby take responsibility.
Ruby spilled liquor worth $5,000? Where is such liquor? Show it to me. I was as angry as I've ever been in my life, but at the same time I felt an unbearable chill. It seems when people get too angry, they come full circle to calmness. For a moment, I decided to let Ruby go down to her room. I didn't want her to see the questioning that was about to start with her father. After Ruby left the living room, I made my husband sit on the floor. I switched my smartphone camera to video recording mode, not forgetting to capture the evidence. Confess everything. What you did using your daughter.
I'm sorry. I really needed the money.
So you sold our daughter. Do you even realize how terrible what you've done is? Imagine how Ruby felt being sold, deceived and taken advantage of by a man she didn't care for, and to end up with an unwanted pregnancy, unable to tell anyone. When I think about how much pain she must have been in, I start to cry.
I swear I will never do anything like this again. I swear.
Of course you shouldn't. How could you even think of doing it a second or third time? If it were possible, I would have wanted my husband to go through the same ordeal as our daughter. I would want him to experience the same level of pain, sadness, and suffering. But that's hardly possible. Then, punishment is the only option. I told that doctor, Dr. Steve too, that you'd be facing legal judgment.
What? Legal judgment?
Of course. When you do something wrong, you should be judged. You've violated the laws against prostitution, child welfare. Just so you know, the penalties are quite severe. My husband trembled with fear. What I said was not a threat. The penalty for violating the anti-prostitution law is imprisoned for up to 3 years or a fine of up to $1,000. The penalty for violating the Child Welfare Act is imprisonment for up to 10 years or a fine of up to $20,000. If it becomes known that he sold his daughter, the media will surely make a fuss. My husband's name will be all over the national news. Now confess everything quickly. What did you do with the money you got from selling our daughter?
That is, well, you see,
Why can't you say it? Just say it clearly. Gambling, right? You enjoyed gambling with the money you got from selling our daughter. Isn't that right?
How did you know about that?
My husband was shocked, but nothing was surprising. I had expected as much, and I had some evidence. A friend of mine had followed my husband and taken photos as evidence. I stopped the recording on my phone for a moment and showed him a few photos of him gambling away.
What? How come these photos exist? When were these taken?
You didn't notice, did you? A friend of mine followed you and took these photos. She's always worried about me and Ruby. She says it's sad that my husband is such a good-for-nothing.
No, this is different. I only go gambling occasionally.
Don't lie to me. What do you mean occasionally? You mean every week, don't you? I knew my husband was under a lot of stress from work. He was so mentally stressed that he even developed alopecia. However, using alcohol and gambling to vent was a big mistake. Moreover, using the money obtained from selling our daughter for fun is utterly reprehensible. I will be discussing this matter in detail with your father and mother as well.
No, please wait, don't do that.
Both of his parents are elderly and currently reside in a nursing care facility. I had visited them before, and they seemed to be quite frail. If they learn in detail about what my husband has done, the shock might be too much for them. The moment they learn their beloved granddaughter was harmed, it might literally cause them a stroke. Perhaps fearing such a situation, my husband desperately tried to dissuade me.
Please, I'll do anything, just don't tell my father and mother.
Do you think you're in any position to make such an audacious request? Do you still not understand how angry I am?
No, I understand. I get it.
My husband was on the floor, shrinking in size. I had no intention of easing my pursuit. I had had enough of this man and was disgusted by him. Now was as good a time as any to say that. Hey, is there anything else you're hiding from me?
What? No, what do you mean? I'm not hiding anything.
Are you still lying? You've been cheating, haven't you? Didn't I tell you my friend has been following you and gathering all sorts of information? Have you forgotten that?
What? She investigated that too?
I have been saving the information for when I would eventually divorce him. My husband was having an affair. The other party is also married, apparently the wife of an executive at a business partner. As I read out the name and details I had noted down about the other woman, my husband started to tremble. It was to be expected. The partner of his affair is known to be quite a fearsome person in their industry. She seems to be quite a well-known figure in the industry, someone with connections that shouldn't be made public and who is even on the police's radar, right? And you went after her?
No, it's not like that. I didn't initiate it. She approached me, and one thing just led to another.
Can you stop playing the victim? Even after you knew who she was, you kept going to meet her repeatedly, didn't you? And you even took money from her, didn't you? My husband seemed unable to reply. His affair partner was quite wealthy. Moreover, her husband often travels abroad. My husband was summoned during those times and continued the affair. Out in the world, he becomes timid and can't say no to anyone. That's his bad habit. That must have been fully exploited. For me, it doesn't matter who initiated the affair. I know where she lives too, you know. I'm planning to send a certified letter and demand compensation for damages. I'll try asking for $13,000 as a start. Considering the amount, her husband will notice it, I'm sure.
Stop. If her husband finds out, my life will be ruined.
Stop being so spoiled. Because of you, Ruby's life has already been ruined a long time ago. You're prepared to take responsibility, aren't you?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
If he's going to apologize, it should be in front of Ruby. Ruby, still a high school student, was forced into an unwanted pregnancy. She's quiet, but she's certainly hurt inside. It's a scar for life. No matter what my husband does, that scar won't disappear. Afterward, I called Ruby to the living room and made my husband apologize to her on his knees. Now for the final touch. I need to get him to sign the divorce papers I had prepared. When I spread out the divorce form on the table, my husband vehemently shook his head, begging not to divorce.
Please, I'll do anything, just not a divorce. If you abandon me, how am I supposed to live from now on? I even have debts.
You finally said it. You have gambling debts, right? How much in total?
About $10,000.
I could see Ruby was shocked. A debt amount that could shock even a child. It's appalling that he accrued it through gambling. Naturally, I had no intention of continuing a marital relationship with such a good-for-nothing. No matter what you say, I will definitely divorce you. Oh yes, I'll also be claiming compensation for your affair.
Compensation?
Of course. Let's see. How about $30,000? That's an incredibly high amount by any standard, but saying it doesn't cost anything. I decided to push it. My husband, unaware of my true intentions, just kept turning paler. How about it? Wouldn't you like it reduced a little? If you sign the divorce papers willingly, I might reduce the fee. You should be grateful, right?
Reduce the fee? That is indeed very gracious.
I think my husband is not in a state to make rational decisions anymore. Following my command, he signed his section of the divorce form. All that's left is to submit it. Lastly, I ordered my husband to pack his necessary belongings and leave the apartment immediately.
What? And you're telling me to leave? But where would I go?
I don't care where you go. I just don't want to see your face anymore. Ruby feels the same, doesn't she? She probably thinks her father should just go somewhere else, right? Of course. Dad, just so you know, I will never forget what you made me do and what happened to my body. I will hate you for the rest of my life, understand?
I'm sorry. Ruby, really, your dad was foolish. I apologize.
In the end, my husband was sobbing. A husband abandoned by his wife and child. Utterly miserable and pathetic. That night, he packed his bags and left the apartment. The remaining belongings would be sent to him once he found a place to live. He would undoubtedly lead a miserable life from now on. It was clear to see. Later, his misdeeds became known to everyone at his company. It seems it was because I had informed HR and the change in his residential and family status. People asked him in detail, and eventually he couldn't keep it hidden and spilled everything. The cause of the divorce being that he sold our daughter. His actions had caused a stir within the company. His colleagues started looking at him with disdain, and he was subjected to harsh words, being called inhumane. No matter what terrible things they said, my ex-husband had no right to argue. What he did was the lowest of the low, and there was no room for excuse. It might have been better if the damage had been contained within the company. The bad rumors about my ex-husband spread to our clients, and many were displeased. His company dealt with human resources, and having a man who sold his daughter was nothing but toxic. Business plummeted, and the company's earnings significantly suffered. The cause was obvious. As a result of an executive meeting, my ex-husband was dismissed for misconduct and faced claims for damages. The reason I know all this in detail is that my ex-husband came to tell me himself. He wanted to inform me of how desperate his situation was, probably hoping for sympathy. To be honest, it was nothing short of foolish. It also proved that he didn't understand the anger of me and our daughter. No matter how pitifully he acted, neither I nor our daughter were willing to accept him.
I really am sorry, as you can see, so please let me live with you.
So you mean to say you want to rely on me for living expenses, right? You plan to use my earnings to pay off your debts, don't you? Am I wrong?
But if I don't, I'll be stuck in a debt repayment life forever.
How spoiled can you get? A parasite through and through, aren't you? Pay off the debt you accrued yourself. It's your own fault, right? Ruby didn't even come out of her room. She definitely didn't want to see her father's face. Honestly, I felt the same way. There are hardly any good memories of life with him. Whatever little there was had been completely overshadowed by unpleasant memories. Every time we remember him in the future, both my daughter and I will feel pain. He needs to take responsibility for this situation and live far away for the rest of his life. Let me say this again. Neither Ruby nor I want to see your face ever again. Do you understand why?
That's because I've been horrible to both of you?
Exactly. If you understand, then promise me. Never appear in front of us again. If you come near again, I'll file for a restraining order with the court, understand? My ex-husband seemed to want to say something else, but he must have realized it was futile. He slowly turned away and walked away. He was heading towards a bleak future of debt hell. No one would help him. The more pitiful and lonely his figure seemed as he walked away, the more a sense of relief washed over me. After that, Dr. Steve was suspended from practicing medicine for 2 years and his clinic was closed. As for my ex-husband, burdened with debts and blamed by many, I don't know the specifics. There are only rumors that he lost everything and is scraping by with part-time jobs. We decided to let the life growing inside Ruby return to heaven this time. It was truly regrettable and heartbreaking, but there was no helping it. Neither Ruby nor I were ready to welcome a new life. I wonder how these events have changed her. Ruby seems stronger. The fact that she continues to attend the same high school even after being discharged is proof of her resilience. I had thought she would want to transfer schools because of the embarrassment and pain. It's strange, but I don't feel that embarrassed. I also have a feeling that I don't want to run away from what I did. I think I want to become stronger by the time I can welcome that child again one day. Ruby. Yes, I understand. I will support you with all my might. The one who suffered the most from this ordeal was Ruby. I can't help but feel uplifted by her positivity, making it impossible for me to be negative. While protecting my beloved daughter, I vow to become stronger than ever before. And having endured such hardships, both my daughter and I will find even greater happiness. I truly believe this from the bottom of my heart.